I'm using Hobby, more so known for armour kits, but they do aircraft, and even though it's probably a lot of it's just was blueprints and never existed, but it's still a topic of interest. And I built the first release of the variant of the Me262, the high altitude one, and they released some more. I quite liked this one's very different. Again, this one never flew, so it's you can do what you want with it. So they have nice, well, I think nice recessed details on the kits. They're quite simple to build, as in you're not a lot of steps. You got 8 steps, so it's, even though it's a bit of a blow up there, that's several parts going together, then gluing that bit on. But they're quite simple. So we got unscrew that sprue, already taken the bottom of the fuselage off, and that sprue. They're pretty crisp on the detail. The only thing is you need to do a bit of clean up because they're a bit rough with their, you can see you got sprue gates. They've big chunky ones, like some manufacturers, they remove them before they pack the kit. This particular part here still got several on there, so need cleaning up. And some of your, or not some, probably a lot or most, your sprue gates will also be on mating surfaces, which I am not a fan of, but a lot of manufacturers do it. So it's just, you got to be careful when you're cleaning that up, that you don't take too much off. And the usual, even the cockpit there, so you've got big chunky sprue gates that may or may not, depends. You can dry fit and test, but that's definitely got to come off, otherwise the wings won't go on. But they have nice raised details for the cockpit. There's no decals for the cockpit, so you'll have to hand paint in details, or you could probably buy an aftermarket set for a normal Me262 and incorporate it into this kit if you wanted to go a bit further with it, make it a bit more interesting or liven it up more. Because this is a what if, I've been on Colts 3D, I've found some bombs. I need to give them a bit of clean up in a couple of areas yet. I can't remember the name of them now, sorry. I'd probably mess it up saying it anyway because it's German. But they're quite detailed as well. So that's a one-piece print. This one also you can print it one piece like that, or it came in several parts, and I think it was just easier this way. So I printed the other ones, but I'm using these ones. I'll paint the pylon, mask it, and then paint the bomb. I'll try and look up some reference as far as if they actually ever, again, I don't even know if they use these or not. And also bought a pilot. He's not really meant for this aircraft, but he'll do. You can see I'm going to have him leaning up against the aircraft like he's checking it over pre-flight. I got him off of eBay, so I'll show him better when I clean him up off the supports. But it looks nicely detailed, and it's 148, so it's nothing huge when you're looking at it anyway. And I've also got some Edard brass and sets. These are just Me262 wheels. There's nothing aftermarket for this kit, so you'll have to make do with your normal Me262 parts if you want to improve. This is, I've mentioned many times that I like resin wheels. I hate these 2-part wheels that everyone does. They should be able to print them, injection, sorry. I was just talking about 3D printing, so now I'm talking about printing. Injection molded. Some of them can do them one piece. I don't know why they all don't do that. For the fact that when you glue it together and clean up the seam, you're going to lose all that detail on that seam join, and that pattern is like a oval almost pattern. You're not going to be able to put that back in there. So these ones have got, you just got where the weight on wheel is to clean up, and they're good to go. Alright, so I'm just about to start cutting bits off the sprues and putting some things in. They have you putting it in the landing gear straight up, but you shouldn't need to do that first up. You got the intake area there, which from memory I think when you look up the landing gear you can see some of that. So I'll start cutting bits off and cleaning up, and then we'll have a look where I'm at next. I've fitted the nose gear bay, this part, which is just part of the interior, so you'll see this when you look up in the gear bay. There was 3 ejection pin marks in there I sanded back. I've put the nose gear wheel in. That's not glued in, it's just a dry fit. It's nice firm fit. And you got the gear door as well. I've glued the actuator on it, but I'll have to, when I come to put it in, I'll have to adjust that. That needs to come out to the opposite wall, but you can't do it both sides at the same time because they need to hook underneath that side, and that goes to the other side. I'll pop that out. So it's a nice big square hole, positive fit. You don't have to worry about alignment. So this is all your, pretty much, you start at the front, you got the intake. I've glued 2 halves together for this side, and I wanted to show you do have ejection pin marks inside. You probably get away with the ones that are right at the rear, they're hard to see, but you will need to clean the seam joins because it's a huge area, the intake on it, and it's easy to see, so it's something that you really need to clean up, unless you make up FOD covers. But it's also not too bad to get at because it's such a open area. So that will sit in there. Oh, get in there. And then you got, so this piece will plug in behind that in a slot, and you can see, you will be able to see those intake fans. But beyond that, so these parts glue on there, you see I've left those huge sprue gates. It doesn't matter because you won't see them. That'll sit in there, and it comes on the back. So that sits on the back. This is a bit of a rough fit here because it wants to pop off, but they'll sit in there like that. So you won't see the internals of that, but you will be able to see, looking up in the gear bar, you will be able to see the sides of the trunking for the intake, or the engine area there. So I'll be painting all this anyway, but you don't need to worry about the inside of it because that won't be seen, because at the back, where did I put that? These are handed too, so I've written a number on the back. So that sits there, so you won't see anywhere past that. So that's all you'll see. That seam join is a bit much to, when that glues together, I'll just leave that one because it's too hard to get at. There is also shallow ejection pin marks there where they sit, but again, that covers it really, so you don't need, I wouldn't worry about it too much, that one. Cockpit tub, seat, so there's no harnesses in the kit, so I'll add this as well. I did a review on these ages ago. If you want to look at them, they're just paper harnesses. They come in different scales for different nationalities, different air forces. So this is the Luftwaffe one, so I'll use them to put on the seat. And then you got the rudder pedals and your yoke. There's a couple other parts, obviously the instrument panel, clear parts is on top, and there's another piece that's on the side. I haven't cut them off yet. Yeah, so I'm going to put some of this together, clean it up, these seam joins, glue that together, and I'll do another dry fit and then see about what I've got to paint in there. So really you should probably paint some of this as well if you're going to look up underneath it when it's together. What I'll do is clean it all up, dry fit it, and put the other fuselage piece on top, and then we'll have a look underside and see how much you can actually see. Alright, I've got all this dry fitted in. So it's the top side, so that piece goes in, which is E2. I'm not sure what purpose it's serving, but you can see it from underneath. That's the cockpit tub. The one I showed earlier is incorrect. This is for the other version, probably the one I built, because this is the cockpit's right up in the tail section. It's got a separate sprue, which is the E sprue. Most of the parts for this version are on there, so that will fit in there. Like so. But I'm going to paint all that before I put that in. So I'll put a dry fit. So now you can see, you can look in, this is, if you flip it up and look, that's what you can see. So there's a fair bit there that probably you should paint if you so desire, if you're not worried about it. Doesn't matter if you don't pick it up or look up inside, you won't see it. I've glued the tail section together, so there's the two halves and the bulkhead up behind the seat. There's a lip there that will fit inside there, so and then it should be alright. That's once this is all glued properly, I'm sure it'll be a better fit. If not, it might need a tiny bit of putty or something, but you can see it's quite a weird looking piece of machinery. Also on this one, I drilled out the contact points, the female points, so these wing ones in particular, when I put the top on, it didn't push down properly, they didn't sit inside, it was like a gap, they wouldn't go in. Now it's flush, before it was like something was holding it up, and I think the holes weren't big enough. That solved my problem anyway, so it must have been that. So I'm going to remove all this now, hopefully, and I'll paint up So I'm going to paint the insides of there because you will be able to see in there. And I'll paint these separate, put them in, and I'll paint all this up. So probably going to stick with just, you know, but if you, oh, that's the other thing I should mention. There's no call outs for paints, so I'm sure, well, the camouflage scheme there is, I guess, but some of the interior and that doesn't really tell you what's going on. And of course it didn't exist, so really you can paint whatever you bloody want, but this particular scheme I might be doing, looks awful. It's just like looks like where they've puttied over the rivets and that and splotched some paint on here now. I don't like it. I'll be just not making something up, but I'll be doing some other pattern. I'll look at some other schemes. Their interior, they're calling out for RLM02, which is, I think, earlier in the war. I'm probably going to do RLM 66, which I think is later in the war. But again, it doesn't really matter because it's not a real aircraft that was in service. And they don't tell you how much, but you definitely will need nose weight because it definitely will tail sit. Alright, I'm going to start painting some things up. Alright, got all the internals in just about. You also need to glue in your actuators for the landing gear at this stage before you button it up. You may be able to get them in later, but it's easier at this stage. So I've cleaned up my intake seam joins. So I use CA glue to fill the join, and then it's a matter of whatever you can get into that, because that one's a rounded intake. I just use a piece of sandpaper on a micro brush and just did that, and then come in with some sanding sponge. Just pinch it with your tweezers and you can get in there, sand it down, smooth it out, and then the usual prime and paint. Alright, so I've painted up the cockpit, just highlighted some switches, buttons in there with Posca pens. 0.7 mil tip. I can use just use your acrylic paints with a toothpick and mark them in. Same effect. I've used my paper harnesses. It's just better than, otherwise I just would have made up foil, aluminium foil, and it wouldn't have had buckles, so that looks better than my other option. Or if you got your spare photo etch frets lying around, you got spare harnesses, you could use them. So the instructions are on the reverse side of the packaging. They're fiddly, but it's, like I said, it's better than my other choice. Painted up the instrument panel. I've got a set of the air scale, so the instrument panel, or the decals for the instrument panels. This one's a World War II US Navy, and honestly in 1/48 scale, if you can tell what's going on, you're better than me, but they do tell you what they're all for. Just again, like I said, there's no decal in the kit for that, and the other way I would have tackled this was just dry brush the bezels where it's raised detail just to highlight it, but that having some instrumentation there is better than that option for me. I think I didn't fill them all in, I just did some. You probably won't see much of it anyway. By the time it goes in, plugs in, and then it sits inside the up in there. Wrong way around. You're not. It's a pretty tight space, so you won't see a lot. So I'm gonna glue all this together now. Button it up, but first I need to put some nose weight in. So I'll look at where I can fit that. Should be plenty of space because it's in here. There's plenty of area because the cockpit's up the rear, so there's nothing there to foul it. Or you could glue some in here as well. Maybe, hang on. No, because that will hit there. So either side there will do it. I'll probably, to do that, I'll just tape it together and balance it to see how much weight I need. I'll put a couple of fishing sinkers in there. I use lead, and we'll go from there. Alrighty, I've got it, all the seams, the join cleaned up. I wasn't happy with this area of the intake, so the actual intake and the lip on the outside had a bit of a gap. So I've put some putty in there and sanded it again. So I'll just paint that again. I use dark aluminium for the intake. I'll paint that in again and then mask that off before I paint. I need to paint that wheel bay and mask that off. You can see I've masked off the cockpit, so the canopy is rather bizarre on this. I'm going to have it open, so it'll be a sideways opening like a MiG-21. I've got the stabilizers off, so this kit comes with, I think I mentioned there's an E-sprue, which is for this aircraft. So you got that, that's the stabilizer for this one, and you've still got the original from the normal, or the first kit they released, the high altitude Me262. So just make sure you use the correct callouts. The resin wheels I got, they won't fit on the kit gear legs. You can see that's huge, and that's the hole I have for the leg, and you'll see that's how big they are on the kit. And also the wheels are a lot smaller, so I'm still gonna use them, but I'll probably cut that off and use some, that's too big. I'll use some brass, probably, a bit of brass tubing. Probably, maybe this one, what size is that? 1.5 mil. Because I don't want it, that's really, I might have to drill the wheel a bit, which is okay, because then it won't be loose. And I'll have to cut that off, and I'll drill into the remaining part of the leg, push it in so it's firm. You don't want to just mate it to the surface, otherwise it can snap off or move. That's at this stage what I'm thinking anyway, how I'll tackle that. One of the disappointing things about this kit is the gear doors, and you've got several ejection pin marks on each one. This one's got 4, these ones have got 3. I'm probably just going to leave them as is because they're all same depth and they're all positioned the same, opposite on each door, so you could almost say it's just part of the skin, because it's pretty hard. The first one I did, I think I filled them in from memory. That one's alright to get at, but these ones are a bit hard to get. It's a lot of work, so I might just leave them as is. You're not really going to see them anyway. Alright, primer down. So I've used Mr. Surfacer 1500. Obviously you can see that is black. I mix it with Mr. Leveling Thinner. It's nice and smooth when it dries. So as it's a black base, I'm going to do what I did with the UMA Harrier and use this as a stencil or template. Spray white primer through it so it gives it that mottled look. So that's the scourer I use. It's 3M. That's too thick. You could use it, but you'd have to blast your airbrush through there longer. And the negative of that is, after a while, if you keep using the same piece of scourer, the paint builds up and it'll seep through and you'll leave big stains. Even though that's what you're doing, you don't want big blobs of paint. So if you peel it away, and it doesn't peel nice and neat, which also helps because it's different thicknesses. It changes the look. Dust on there. All right. So that's what I'll do to that. For the scheme, I've been looking up heaps of images of just the normal, the Me262, the real ones that they used. I come up with some ideas, but when I come through, I got this book years ago. It's got decal sheet and it's got a few schemes for the 163, the Comet, and the 162 and the Me262. I quite like something like this. Now, I'm not going to do it exactly, just an idea of how I'm going to approach it. I quite like splinter camo, but over the years I've done a lot of German aircraft and their splinter camo. I like this is sort of random and rough, it appears to be. So I'm going with something along those sort of lines, and paints I'll be using will be late war RLM 76, which is like a sky colour. It's not the blue colour of early war. And so I'm going to paint the whole aircraft this colour, and then I'll come in with RLM 81 and RLM 82. So you see you've got a green and a violet green type colour, browny green colour, and do the random pattern over the top, because it's such, even though it's a variant of a 262, it's quite different with the big raised engine nacelles that are sitting up top as well. So I'll work something out that I'm happy with, and they're all real colour, AK real colour. So the actual colour numbers is RC322 for the late war, RC326 for RLM 82, and RC325 for the RLM 81, and that's version 3. There's I bought a whole heap of these years ago, and there's when you start getting into Luftwaffe colours, there's just heaps, and it seems to generate a lot of heated discussions for some reason. I find German subjects quite weird in that manner. Alright, I've painted up my what do they call it? Rooster or something. They are Rooster or something. The missiles, I think they're air to air, but when I looked up the weapon, some were air to ground, so I'm not real sure, and I'm not real sure if they actually used them or how successful they were. Now they are 3D prints, so I can see on certain angles I can see some print lines on the pylon, but once it's on under the wing, it should be okay. As for the paint scheme, I just went again. I looked the images; they're all different colours. Some of them actually, I think the wings or winglets or whatever you want to call them on it were timber, but because it's one piece, it would be too hard. Well, I think it's too hard to try and get a nice timber grain finish on it, so I just painted it metal body and fancied up the nose. Some of them have got like checkers, some of them are red, so I just made up my own thing. It's total fiction, the aircraft's fiction, so it doesn't really matter what you do whatever you want. Because I'm using the pilot figure and he's standing on the ground, I feel whenever you start involving figures, you need a base, because if you just put that in your display cabinet and have old mate stand next to it, I guess that's okay, but you're sort of telling a story. So I've already started making up a base, and I just knocked it off because I just glued them on. So we got a timber plank runway or tarmac. It's just rough, that's how I want it. It's like late war, they would have been using whatever. It's not, the thickness is not the scale, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to mix up some sculpt and mold, plaster of Paris, a bit of sand, and create earth next to it. So when the earth's there, you won't see how thick the wood is. So basically the aircraft will be sitting on the planks of wood, and then the guy will be the pilot, probably at the nose. Depends how high he is when I'll check it, when he glue it all together, how tall he is compared to what part of the aircraft that will suit where his hand's touching, basically. So it's just ply base, balsa wood sides, and I've used the balsa wood for the planks. I need to fill in the holes, or I use pins to hold I just PVA glue it. It does the job. It's not like it's gonna be handled all the time. So, and I'll stain it, varnish it, and I've made up another those black aluminium you saw I used on the UMA Harrier. I've made up another plaque for this one to put on the front of it. So now that's glued and starting to dry, I'll come back to this now, and I'll put down my splatter pattern. Alright, I got the base colour down. I changed up how I was doing it, so on the underside, instead of doing the late war RLM 76, I did the earlier one, which is a bluey grey colour, just to break it up so it's not all the same colour. The colour callouts that I'm referencing, the actual Me262 was just primed RLM02, which is grey, but I went with the bluey grey and just like I said, just break it up so it's not all uniform, and like at the end of the day it's fictional, so it doesn't really matter, I guess. But that hasn't had a clear gloss coat yet, so it's just the colours down. So now I'm going to come in and do my mottling patterns over the top and see what I end up with. Also I did so I cut out that part of the gear leg, drilled it out and put it in the brass tube, and I've drilled that out the same size, so I'm not going to put it in there yet, but I'll wait until at the end, and then put it and align it. There's a small well, actually it's not really a flat spot on these ones, but where I cut it off I'll put towards the bottom anyway. But you just need to be careful when you're drilling out. I use the I start off with I've got a sewing needle and a pin vise, and I pretty much like if you're using wood and you use the punch to mark where you're going to drill, just so that, because there's not a lot of much area either side of that brass tube, and I drilled it in a fair way so it's got a bit of bite. Alright, it's weird and wild, I know, but remember it's fictional. So I ended up adding another colour to the mix. So I got the RLM 81 I said earlier, then I've done another RLM 81, which you can see is a darker colour, because that call out for that scheme in that book I noticed had another colour in it, so I just picked another colour I thought was similar or close, a bit darker, and added that in there. I've tried to keep it random. Your mind naturally wants to create patterns when you're doing things that, for me anyway, it's hard to keep it random. My mind's trying to fill things in. The stabilizers have done a bit of a different pattern, which is what that scheme in the book had. So it's very, very colourful. I'm going to stick with it, and I'm sort of thinking, nah, I don't like it, but I keep telling myself this aircraft never flew, it's just go with it. So now I'm gonna, I'll give it a clear gloss coat, which I haven't done, and I've also, you can see it's sort of mottled, which is also the look I wanted. I didn't want to do it too heavy with the camo on top of the RLM 76, just to suggest it was quickly painted and whatnot. So the markings on it, and you got the Balkan Cruiser white, just the simple cross. These are easy to mask, so you lay down tape and then square it off and mark it out. Obviously anything you can paint looks better than decals, so I'll put them in. This particular aircraft, their call out doesn't have anything on the underside, and I'll probably go with that because you won't see it anyway. I'll do the top, tail, the swastika, I'll use the decal, probably, yeah, a bit quicker than masking that one off. It's a bit more complex. Yeah, and I'm also going to do I'm going to mask it and do it myself. I don't have a decal. I'm going to do a shark's mouth, with not necessarily a shark's mouth, but a mouth with teeth, just to, again, something different. And even though the scheme is already eye-catching, that'll add a bit more to it, a bit of colour. So onwards. I've masked off and painted Balkan Cruise on the side. You can see I've masked off the outline. I just need to mask off the ends, the length of it. And I've masked off where I'm painting in the mouth. For the teeth, I'll just be using these Infinity cutting mats. This one's got the, you can do the triangles. I'll just keep it simple, and that way they're all the same. Just cut them out. These boards are fantastic. I use them every build, always cutting thin strips of Tamiya tape or shapes. They're magnificent, well worth the investment. So I'm going to paint them in, do the teeth, So I'll mask off teeth, and then I'm going to paint the mouth red. So, and then I'll move on to decals. I've got another set. I've got a set of decals from, I think it's extra decals with swastikas on them. They're the whole swastika. I know by law, companies have to split it up. But I might use the other sheet. I might use a white one to go with the white Balkan Cruise. I'll think about it. And I'll probably use the Totenkopf head by the looks of it. I don't know if that transferred to their Luftwaffe or not, but I might use that. And I don't know if I'll do the number or not. Yeah, I'm just looking at I've got another sheet of decals there left over from something I built. Oh, where's my base? Alright, so I've done the timber colour. So all I did was use I usually use burnt umber, and that was the base colour for each piece of timber, and then I mixed 2 more lots. So I used a wet palette, and I mixed so I had burnt umber, then I mixed burnt umber with red brown, and then I mixed burnt umber with buff, just to change the shades of the timber so it's not a uniform colour. And it's balsa wood, so it soaks in, but also just kept the paint watered down a bit so it soaked in better. I don't mind if the wood underneath shows through, because it is wood, so it doesn't matter if it shows through. It makes it more natural. And so it's just plaster Paris, sculpt the mold, sand, and if you want a bit of, if you just grab some soil from your garden and mix it in, just that gives it the texture, instead of just having plaster Paris, which is just so smooth. If you put a bit of soil, so I put the sand in it as well. I think I'm probably just going to paint that by hand. Same again with the AK 3rd Gen. Paint the soil in, and then I'm going to do a bit of static grass and whatnot around it. When I finish the top, I remove that tape, and then like you see, I've puttied in the holes from the pins, sand that back, and I'll stain it and varnish it and put my plaque on the front of it, and then that will be done. So this time I'm keeping up with the base to the model. Alright, so here's my mouth. I had some decals from another build I did. One of the weird German planes, spare decals, that eyes in there. It saved me masking up and trying to paint some eyes. So that's a swastika from that other set I mentioned. It's one piece. The skull crossbones are from this kit, and they're not great. It's like a matte. When you look at them, they got a matte, very flat. You can see it on the white. They're very flat looking carrier film, and it sort of still looks hazy on the model, so I'd be avoiding the white ones for sure, which is why another reason I masked them and paint them, even though that looks better, but I wasn't sure how they'd perform. I've got the pilot off the supports, so if you've never dealt with 3D printing the supports. Once it's been cured, it's extremely hard and brittle, so be careful getting supports off, especially on fragile areas like fingers and that hose for the mask. You try and trim them off. Don't just try and break them off, because it might take part of your print that you need. So I'm going to have a look on, see if I can find some pictures or colour callouts for what this guy is wearing. It looks pretty heavy duty. I'll paint him up. Thankfully there's not much, if any, skin going on with him, so that helps me. There, and the base I've just about done now. I've added, so you can see the white and the PVA glue still drying. I've painted the soil in, like I said, by brush, hand painting, static grass with a static grass applicator so it stands up, and some AK shrubbery just to add colour, adds colour to the base. So just sets it off a bit. That's right there. Right. So and I've put a stain on the timber. I'll give that clear varnish to the timber soon, and that'll be, and when I've varnished it, then I can put my plaque on the front of it, and that'll be done. So there's not much more. I've started painting the wheels up. So I've painted it rubber black, Tamiya rubber black. I'll give it a clear gloss coat, then I'll use a stencil circle template and spray in the hubs. And that's pretty much the build done, as in construction. And then it'll be down to doing a wash and putting it all together. So I think really there's not much more to show. I'm reusing my standard wash on it, Flory Models Dark Dirt, so you've seen that heaps, no need to show it again. So pretty much I think next time we come back we'll be able to look at the final build. I need to grab that. So the canopy, obviously I've got to paint that, and it's like I mentioned, it would work as a side opening canopy. Well, I think they don't show you in the instruction. I imagine it open like that, which is how I'm going to do it. I'll have it open like that, and I'll use a piece of stretch sprue to represent a actuator for it or something like that. So I'll glue it to the fuselage, but I'll add a piece of stretch sprue to make it look like that's what opens and closes the canopy. So that's pretty easy to do. There's not much going on there. So yeah, we'll come back and have a look at the final look. And there it is, all done. Great little kit. If you're after something different that goes together well, it's easy and quick to build, no problems, especially if you like Luft 46 subjects. This is a good kit. I highly recommend it. As I mentioned through the build, it's fictional, so you can do whatever you like with it. There is no right or wrong. You can do it as captured. You can do it captured by the Allies, or what I did, made up German scheme or an actual scheme. A lot of fun, really enjoyed it. I think probably 3-4 days to get this result. Just goes together well. Just if only all kits were that easy. I really love it, just the shape of it. It's weird, wacky. I was a bit not sure when I did that camo scheme, but it's growing on me. It's sometimes you just gotta go with it, push it. Don't change your mind. Just do it. I like the addition of the mouth. It's just adds visually to the model at bright red. So yeah, the little resin figure I just got off eBay. If you go into your search on eBay, just type in 148 pilot figures and you'll get a whole heap of hits on that. That particular one's from a Chinese company. So that again was all I had to do was glue the hands on. Basically, the rest of the figure was printed as one. The resin wheels, I wasn't sure. I was a bit worried because they're a bit smaller in diameter than the kit ones, but it worked out well. It all looks good to me. All your landing gear legs and that plug in nice big positive fits, so again, no problem. So definitely recommend it if you want an easy build. This is the kit. Alright, I'll add some still photos. Thank you for watching the build.